Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Aside from all of the Premier League action that was of course taking place today, the Manchester derby, Leeds against Aston Villa, there was some news coming out from Wolverhampton Wanderers today in regard to their managerial situation, as there has been yet another managerial casualty to take place this campaign so far, and it comes in the form of Bruno Lage, the now former Wolverhampton Wanderers manager. He has today been given the sack by Wolves following a string of very poor results. I think the tagline was basically only one win in their last 15 Premier League games has seen enough for the Wolverhampton board to go in a different direction and give him the sack, and as of right now it seems the search for his successor begins. We're going to be talking about Bruno Lage, about Wolves, about where things went wrong, about how they can maybe even try and redeem themselves this season. But before we go any further in talking about all of that, I would like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always and forever be greatly appreciated. But for now, let's talk about the sacking of Bruno Lage, the now former Wolves manager, of course, given the chop today by Wolves, not even 24 hours after their latest defeat, which was against West Ham on Saturday night. The Hammers were at home. They beat Wolves by 2-0, and that was the last straw as far as the Wolves board were concerned to give Bruno Lage the sack. I've got to say that right off the bat, I think we could all kind of tell it was somewhat coming. It was somewhat going to happen at some point. Obviously, he came in last year. He was the successor to Nuno Espirito Santo. And he took to the Premier League pretty well. He was this sort of unknown figure, I guess you'd say, especially to the Premier League at least. Sort of unknown from Portugal. The kind of Portuguese kind of trend that's been hitting Wolves so much in terms of their recruitment and things like that was seen again as a way of looking into it. Another Portuguese figure walking into the club at Wolves. Bruno Lage was that. He was sort of unknown, wasn't notorious enough to a lot of Premier League fans at least. But he came in and he took to the task pretty well. It wasn't so long ago that we were discussing Wolverhampton Wanderers playing European football again, going into European competitions. There are only so many points away from a potential Champions League spot towards the end of last season, but then the wheels sort of fell off and poor results came. It wasn't so much the performances, it was just the results. The results just simply were not good enough, and I did warn at the beginning of the season when I'm giving my predictions on how every Premier League team would do that. If they didn't sort out the issues there, if they didn't sort out their goal scoring issues, that was a main thing that I constantly held against Wolves, was that they play some nice approach play, they can play some nice football at times, but it's all about sticking the ball in the back of the net. And I just felt at times for Wolves, they just didn't have a prolific or consistent enough goal scorer in the attacking third to do that. And it turns out they haven't addressed that kind of issue. I think obviously, you look at the players that they had there, Raul Jimenez, not quite the same since of course his horrific injury. And they just haven't really been able to find someone who can be that guy to stick the ball in the back of the net on a consistent enough basis. And ultimately, it's led them to the point now where they're not picking up the results they need. They are the lowest scorers in the Premier League currently. And it's all come to this. It's all come to a head here with, obviously, his sacking. Like I say, I don't think there was too much wrong with what he tried to implement. I think that when you compare it to obviously Nuno Espirito Santo, when obviously he came in and succeeded him, I think the foundations were laid there by Santo. I just think that it had gone old and stale at Wolves, which is why they had a bit of a poor season in the final year of Nuno there. And then you have Bruno Lage who comes in and he adds just a little bit of flair and a little bit of creativity here and there, and he does change the formation a lot. Obviously, he takes it from being a 5 at the back to a 4 at the back, which changes it a fair amount. But he just adds a little bit of a sparkle and a bit of creativity here and there. But like I say, the issue was that they just couldn't put the ball into the back of the net on a consistent enough basis, and ultimately it's why he leaves them in 18th. Like I said, the lowest goal scorers in the division so far, and really just on a very, very poor run of form. It's unfortunate, but you are going to be looked at, especially when you've spent over 100 million in the transfer market. When you spend over 100 million in the transfer market, you are going to be looked at, you are going to be under the microscope a bit more scrutinised, and especially with having a pretty good showing in the standing last year and last season, your debut season in the Premier League. You came in, hit the ground running a little bit. They were very hard to break down at times, were Wolves. They had a very strong defensive record at times last season, but it just all started to fall apart towards the end of the campaign, and you just thought that maybe they just lacked a bit of squad depth. Maybe with the transfer window coming up, they could have added to their roster, added to their squad, and maybe they could have picked out little key points of their squad that needed to be improved upon, that needed to be beefed up, and maybe they could go again next season and maybe put a stronger case forward for a European football space. Or the alternative, which is what I kind of alluded to, is that things continue to slightly downward spiral, and that is obviously what has happened across the opening 8 games or so of this league. It's been not a great start to the season. It was a poor end to the season, like I say, for Wolves and Bruno Lage. I would probably say that this was probably writing on the wall a little bit, not massively. I wasn't expecting him to go so soon. I definitely wasn't expecting him to be the next managerial casualty. When you look at a couple of the other managers that are in pretty big hot water right now, when you look at obviously Everton with Frank Lampard, Aston Villa with Steven Gerrard, Leicester with Brendan Rodgers, of course, and maybe even Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest. I definitely wasn't expecting Bruno Lage's name to be the next name on that managerial casualty list, but there we go. Now, as far as obviously what Wolves can go on and do next, I've got a strange feeling about Mauricio Pochettino. Pochettino, it could be a little bit out there. It could be a little strange. He's already voiced or reportedly voiced his admiration, shall we say, for the potential Aston Villa job. We alluded to how Steven Gerrard is in a bit of hot water there, but again, it could happen. Pochettino's name could happen. They could go for a former Premier League manager themselves, or they could do what they did with obviously Bruno Lage's approach and go for someone who's not very well known to the Premier League. Maybe they go for maybe they dive into the Portuguese market again and go for someone along them lines. But whoever comes in has got a bit of a task on their hands, and obviously the task is trying to get this Wolves team firing on all cylinders. And the cylinders, obviously, like I say, they're decent. Their approach playing their football at times was very decent and nice to watch at times. It was just sticking the ball in the back of the net, and if it wasn't for wonder strikes from the likes of from Ruben Neves or whoever, the consistency in goals was very hard to come by. He did do well. He did obviously, like I say, bring in some creativity and sparkle. He's helped Pedro Neto and even a couple of other names that have come through and even been bought. Mateus Nunes looks like a decent signing. So there is a lot to work with in terms of what you're seeing, but of course there is a lot of room for improvement as well for whoever does take on that role and does succeed Bruno Lage at Wolves. But like I say, it's going to be interesting to see how the new job search goes for Wolves going forward. But what we do know is that there will be no more Bruno Lage at Wolves for the going forward. That is a chapter that can be laid to rest in the history of Wolverhampton Wanderers. He is today being sacked by the club following a string of poor results that have led to this moment. And as I always say, guys, these are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of the sacking of Bruno Lage by Wolverhampton Wanderers? What do you make of his time at Wolves? What do you make of how Wolves should go going forward? Should they continue with this kind of Portuguese approach, or should they go for someone a little more well known? Like I say, don't bat too much of an eyelid if Mauricio Pochettino's name does spring up over the next few days or so. That could be very, very interesting to watch. But of course, like I always say, leave your thoughts, your comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, down below in the comment section, because I'm sure it'll make for interesting reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way up if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things always and for be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see you all again soon in another video.